Mention the Crusades, and one image usually comes to mind: an unending, blood-soaked holy war pitting cross against crescent. But the 12th century Crusader states, a territory known as Outremer, operated on a different logic. Continuous warfare is expensive, and eventually the initial conquering armies had to transition into a functional government. Look at this population breakdown. European settlers, the Franks, were a tiny minority, surrounded by massive native Islamic and Jewish populations. This demographic reality dictated policy. Lords relied on native peasantry to harvest crops, manage trade, and pay taxes to keep kingdoms functional. When you are massively outnumbered and isolated from your supply lines, ideological purity is a luxury you cannot afford. Survival demanded a cold, practical ecosystem of coexistence. This brings us to Usama ibn Munqidh. He was a veteran Muslim aristocrat, a lethal cavalryman and a shrewd diplomat, navigating between rival courts. We know this ecosystem functioned because Usama wrote a detailed memoir. His records serve as forensic evidence of how elites from opposing sides actually interacted. In 1140, diplomatic missions brought Usama to Jerusalem. The ultimate prize of the Crusades, it acted as the operational nerve center of the Frankish world. While there, Usama made his way to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Following the First Crusade, this complex had been fortified, repurposed as a headquarters. These were the Knights Templar. Yet Usama didn't view these elite Christian shock troops as his mortal enemies. In his writings, he openly refers to the veteran Templars as his friends and professional peers. Within the functional center of Christian military power, the binary of holy war collapsed in favor of professional respect. Whenever Usama visited the Al-Aqsa headquarters, the Templars extended a remarkable operational courtesy. They would actively clear out a small adjoining chapel, a space they had converted into a church, so that Usama could have a quiet place to pray. These are the premier holy warriors of Christendom, men sworn to defend the faith with swords, actively facilitating an Islamic prayer service inside their own fortress. One afternoon, Usama entered the chapel, recited his opening formulas, and stood to pray, facing south toward Mecca. That fragile, quiet moment of uninterrupted prayer represents the highest point of the frontier's geopolitical equilibrium. But that silence was abruptly shattered. A Frankish knight burst in, completely ignoring the arrangement. He rushed directly at Usama, violently grabbing the diplomat and physically wrestling him to face east, shouting that this was the proper Christian direction to pray. This attacker wasn't one of the veteran Templars. He was a new man, a recent arrival straight off a boat from Europe. He was completely uncalibrated to the frontier, operating strictly on the imported religious dogma he'd been fed back home. Hearing the commotion, the veteran Templars immediately rushed in. They grabbed their fellow Christian and forcefully pulled him off of Usama. But the newcomer was relentless. The moment the Templars turned their backs, the fanatic broke free and launched a second aggressive assault on the praying guest. The Templars returned and dragged their fellow Christian out, throwing him into the street. To protect a member of an opposing faith, the Templars violently expelled one of their own. They understood that preserving their local diplomatic order took priority over religious kinship. Following the scuffle, the Templars apologized profusely to Usama. They explicitly excused the attacker's behavior, explaining he was a stranger fresh from the Frankish lands who had simply never seen anyone pray in a direction other than east. Usama decided he'd had enough prayer for one day. He left the chapel, passing the expelled zealot, and noting the man's trembling, impotent rage. Reflecting on the incident, Usama made a clinical deduction. In a highly volatile ecosystem, the true danger isn't the veteran enemy who understands the rules of engagement. The real threat is the ignorant fanatic fighting on your own side. Ideological rigidity naturally decreases as the distance to the Levant shrinks. While the European heartland could afford the luxury of dogma, the contested frontier required the necessity of pragmatism. This constant friction between battle-hardened veterans and uncalibrated newcomers was a massive vulnerability. It threatened the stability of the Crusader states for their entire precarious existence. Because ultimately, fragile empires do not survive through religious zealotry or ideological purity. They survive through cold, ruthless pragmatism and the rigorous maintenance of order.